Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, this is Jeanie, and I'm getting an echo back on this. Try this one. Welcome to MindShifters Radio, and I'm Jeanie. I'm your co-host. I apologize if this is echoing. Calling number is 646-200-0169.
Well, let's see if you're actually turning it over to me. Can you hear me? Okay, well, I'm having trouble hearing you, sweetie, so here we are with our technical game again. Why is this happening to us again? Happens to be the title of my book, and the work that we do is about understanding the ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness, and that idea of forgiveness being about how you change what's happening inside of you, not how you get everybody else to change so you never have to face yourself. And so we're here to support you with the tools and the teachings from the ancient Aramaic language. And that language, the word forgive, has nothing whatsoever to do with letting other people off the hook because you have some kind of pain or turmoil going on. It is literally the way you go inside yourself and remove your pain and turmoil. So we're here to support you in removing all pain and turmoil. Did you know that pain and turmoil is absolutely not required? It's totally, completely optional. However, if you play the game of denial and you pretend that everybody else must be the problem in your life and the only reason you're in pain, then what happens is you hide the part of your mind with which your pain has been created. It's called a dissociated state. That dissociated state of mind, once created, is absolutely unchangeable until you take it out of its dissociated posture. The way that you do that is through the ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness. It's the how-to of changing what's going on inside of us. So we're here to support you in being able to understand how to change the contents of your mind. If you're new to the show, I invite you to go to our website.
You just disappeared.
www.whyagain.com. Disappeared? Am I back there?
Now you're back.
Excuse us, we've still got some technical difficulties going on. But the forgiveness process is available if you go to our website, again, www.whyagain.com. And as you look at the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. So you can click on that link, and as you do, you'll see the first two links under that section. The first one is an explanation of the Aramaic forgiveness process. The chapter is entitled New Discoveries from the Ancient Aramaic on Forgiveness. And the second link is the Reality Management Worksheet, which is the how-to of forgiveness. How do you change what's happening inside of you? Again, forgiveness has nothing to do with letting other people off the hook. So welcome to our show. We're honored, delighted, and privileged to be talking to you today. And Jeanie, any callers, any comments in the chat room, questions?
We actually do have someone with their hand up, so welcome everyone. The calling number is 646-200-4169. And caller, area code 607, you're on the air. Who do we have?
It's Richard again. How you doing, Michael?
Hi,
hey,
Richard.
I'm blessed and highly favored. How about you, Richard? I
would say highly blessed today, too. I had an interesting thing happen again. This has been I don't know how to describe this. All these, I don't know how you would describe this, but today I'm going to meet with. I work with some senior citizens during my somatics class, and so I'm driving down, and I get down to park my car, and I smell this smell, and I get out and realize that my engine oil cap is missing, and so it's been spewing oil on my car. So, of course, after my first thought was, how did this guy that stole gas out of my car get the oil cap out of my car? Because, I mean, he didn't have a key to my car, so how did he get the engine compartment open to get the oil cap out? So that was my first thought. Then I reflected back on a time when I was driving back cross country from Reno, and I had stopped to get gas and had checked the oil and forgot to put the oil thing, and it drove like, I don't know, the first 300 or 400 miles. I didn't stop at the first rest stop. I was trying to get lots of miles on my car before I got back, and and realized at some point along the line that my engine wasn't sounding right, and I pulled over at a rest stop, and the oil had been splattered all over the place in my car and all over my engine, all over my car, right. And there was barely a quart of oil left in the car, and miraculously the oil cap was still sitting there on the engine, and so I was very gracious at that point. I was lucky and had gotten.
So Richard.
So
where are we heading with this?
Well, I'm heading with this. Yesterday you were talking about the red alligator or whatever when a thought comes up about something. So my thought at that point was, did I just misplace the cap, or maybe it just fell off? Maybe there was nothing other than just coincidence that this cap fell off. Is what I came to, finally got to in my mind was with it, rather than, this guy took the cap. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Does that make sense? Anyway.
Well, it's
regardless. I went to my class, and there's a woman in my class who's taking the class who does Tai Chi, and
Richard,
we were talking.
Richard, can you hold for a second?
Uh-huh.
What we're doing right now is we're listening to your story, and my invitation would be that if we get really good at telling our story, then we get really good at living our story and creating it over and over and over again. What I would invite you to do is to look at what's the bottom line that you want to head toward that you need to shift and change, and how can we support you in doing that. Knowing about the Tai Chi teacher and blah, blah, blah doesn't really support us in supporting you. And what we want to do is get to the bottom line, let go of the story, and bring healing. So how can we support you in that?
Well, perhaps if I just continue on with the story just a little bit, maybe it'll make sense. So I'm telling this Tai Chi teacher, she comes in, and I was telling her what had just occurred. Actually, I'd gone and done a little sitting meditation before I started, and basically wanted to hold the light in my mind, and realizing that if anything negative came up, I was seeing darkness and not light in my mind. And then she showed up anyway, and the interesting part was I started to tell her about this, and I told her the story about my sister living in the house, the new house versus the old house, And so after I told her this story, she goes, well, which house do you want to live in? And so the idea being, well, yeah, here I am telling this negative story rather than living in the new house of letting this go and not having any negativity around it. So anyway, and then the other person that usually shows up, and I immediately started telling him the story, and she goes, so which house are you living in?
So, Richard, you're still telling your story.
I know. I understand. And
are you ready to let go of it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Sure. Right. You know, I mean, at that point...
my input to you would be to recognize that we are creators.
Right.
And as
exactly.
creators, the way we create is out of what we focus on. You go back to the ancient Aramaic, they said, let thine eye be single and thy body will be filled with light, which in Greek doesn't make much sense. But when you go to the Aramaic, that light is referring to the physics world. And if you talk to the modern-day physicists, they'll tell you that our world, our physiology, our so-called matter is made of light energy, reduced in its rate of vibration. So singular focus to the exclusion of all else, produces creation. And so the idea of the work is, if in some way, shape, or form I'm creating something that I'd rather not be having, as opposed to letting my mind trap me in that story and having me focus on it again and again and again, that's why we have the forgiveness worksheet. You put the pen to the paper and you start canceling what promotes that story inside of you, and that starts the dissolution of the story so that you can create a different reality, a different experience. Have you put, we talked a couple days ago about this, have you put the pen to the paper on any worksheets with it?
Oh, yeah. I've done a few. I've done quite a few, actually.
Awesome.
I just did one right before I called you. If you want me to talk about that,
and what are you
I will.
seeing? What are you seeing as you do the worksheet process?
Well, maybe I should just go through my worksheet, and you can, and maybe you can point out what's good or bad.
Actually, at this point, if you've got a specific question about the worksheet, that would be awesome. But again, I don't need the details of it. But what is, if you look at step 6? In step 1, we ask you to outline your story, and then in step 6 is, how is that shifted? What are you seeing about your story, and how are you feeling compared to the beginning of the worksheet? So what kind of shifts are you experiencing?
Well, I'm usually shifting, towards more love and towards more peace. So
that's definitely where we want to go.
Right. So, I don't know where I want to go here with this myself, but certainly, for example, in number 6, because I caught this right away, and there was no real damage to my car. In number 6, I said, stating the positive, where's what you want from the situation? I said the world to be gracious and all that happens in my life. And so that's what I want.
So that's your answer in number 3?
No, that was my answer in number 6, what I want in positive words, what you want from 1A. The 1A was the missing cap,
Right.
Which caused my feelings of confusion and anger. Why did this happen to me? Again, as I was saying, since this happened to me once before.
So the thing to notice, one of the things about the way our mind shows us and builds realities is it does it according to our words. And so just a little correction in your words can open a whole different world. And when you say, it caused my frustration or my confusion, what you're in essence saying to your mind is, mind, I want you to show me evidence and a reality that this event, the missing cap, is the cause of my confusion and my whatever's going on. When I can shift my words just slightly to, this event brought up confusion for me, I'm a whole lot closer to my mind being able to show me what's actually going on inside of me rather than projecting what's going on inside of me. So just that shift in words. When we live in a world of that made me angry, that made me sad, that made me afraid, what we're doing is we're creating anger, sadness, and fear in ourselves, and we're pointing it at the world. We're saying the world did this to me, and, basically proclaiming innocent victimhood. When I shift my words to, oh, I have anger about that, rather than that made me angry, I give my mind permission to show me a whole different evidential structure, a whole different world. And that world that shows me what's going on inside of me truly, as opposed to what I pretend is going on outside of me or caused from the outside of me, I get to see truth. And then when my truth isn't really true, I'm empowered to change it. So that's one of the ideas of shifting language. So I'd invite you to just look at, this event brings up my confusion, shows me my confusion, but it doesn't cause it. And as we get used to regulating our words in harmony with truth, we get to see a whole lot more about ourselves than otherwise we get to see.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, yeah, cool.
Thanks.
So your goal was your goal for the situation with the gas cap. What was it?
And you're talking about number 6. I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want.
State in positive words what you want from 1A. The world to be gracious in all that happens in my life.
Okay. So you might want to be more specific related to that particular situation. That goal is a goal that you would have if you were doing a worksheet on the world.
Okay.
So if number 1A were the world, then the answer would be I want the world to be more gracious. But if I'm doing a worksheet on the missing gas cap and the fact that I have confusion, my goal, if it's about the gas cap, might be I want it to be there. I want things to be there when I need them to be there. If I were doing the same worksheet about myself, then if I were the goal, and you could do another worksheet on myself being the object of attention in that situation, then the goal for myself would be I want to have clarity and a clear mind as opposed to confusion. So you want to tie the goal as much as possible. This is a key step in the worksheet process, so thanks for bringing it forward. You want to tie the goal as clearly as you can to exactly what the object of attention is in the worksheet. What is it you wanted from that object of attention? And the reason for that is because our goals are the drivers that cause our mind to use data to build the world that we see. And when we're able to identify specifically the goal that causes my mind to see it this way, i.e. out of confusion, and then when I do the forgiveness step, the canceling of the goal, as I cancel the goal because my goal is linking to confusion, I get to go directly to the confused part of my mind. And as I bring love there, my confusion begins to dissolve. So that's the whole, that's kind of the procedure, the process of the worksheet is I've got an object of attention. I have some form of upset, or in this case, confusion. I have a goal, and the goal causes my mind to use confused data to build its output. That's why I'm in confusion. And when in the Aramaic language, for other people who are perhaps new to the forgiveness process or the worksheet, the next step with that is to cancel the goal. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag, and it literally means to cancel. And what happens as I cancel that goal is the picture that I'm seeing based on, in this case, confusion, collapses. And when it collapses, I get to see the hidden part of my mind that's creating the confusion. And when I can bring love to that part of my mind, what will happen is I'll begin to dissolve confusion. And I'll just have greater clarity everywhere I look because I'll have cleaned out some of my confusion. Does that make sense? Does that fit for you?
Yep. There's a lot of things making sense in what you're saying. Certainly, obviously, this is helpful because it helps me clean up my language regarding the worksheets. So it helps me.
We have an awesome game, Richard, that you'll get to play when you get to Heartland, and it's called the Regulatory Peach Game. One of the things we do is a course called Laws of Living that we actually originally created for the prison system. Cut recidivism by over 90% until the sheriff got rid of it because he had no jailmates left. He had nobody to fill his cells and therefore no per diem income from the state. But in Laws of Living, we spend a lot of time talking about a thing we call regulatory speech. And regulatory speech is the speech that regulates your cellular chemistry, it regulates your emotions, it regulates your mind's output, it regulates what you create in your life, what you resonate or pull into you. And we call it the Regulatory Peach Game because several years ago, we had a woman there who had her 3-year-old son in the Laws of Living class. And the young man's name was Orion. And we spent 2 or 3 days talking about regulatory speech, and Orion's laying beside his mom sleeping, and it's time for an intermission, so there's a little bit of noise in the room, and Orion wakes up. And there's one of the people in the crew went back to the kitchen and got a huge, big, clear plastic bowl of peaches and brought them out for a snack. And Orion, is just kind of waking up, and he looks around the room, and he spies the peaches on the food bar, and he whispers in his mom's ear, of course, just loud enough for everybody to hear him. It was hilarious. He says, "Mom, are those regulatory peaches?" So in honor of Orion, we call it the Regulatory Peach Game. But the idea is that our culture tends to teach us a lot of projection and destructive speech. And so one of the games that we'll ask everybody that comes to Heartland to play is be willing to have feedback and play the Regulatory Peach Game. So when I say things like, "Oh, that really kills me," somebody's going to say, "Is that what you really want to do? Do you really want to kill yourself over that?" "Well, no, I didn't mean that." It's like, but there's a power in us that doesn't know we don't mean things. I remember working with a young man that his family was in Rockford, Illinois, and he had moved to Atlanta. I had a private practice in Atlanta back then. And this young man had been away from home for about 5 years, had nothing to do with his parents. Basically, they were like outcast to him. And he gets a call from his mother one day, and she's on her way. They're on their way to Florida, his mom and dad, and they want to stop by and see him. And in our session, the first words out of his mouth were, "My mother is a pain in the you-know-what." The day his parents arrived, he got hemorrhoids. The day his parents left, his hemorrhoids left. And so the Regulatory Peach Game is about helping each other to stay on track when we do some sort of speech that tells our mind, "I want you to show me a lie," like, "You made me angry, you made me sad, you made me afraid." I'm saying to my mind, you have to lie to me when I say those things because I'm the only one that can make me angry, sad, or afraid. And as I start to shift my speech, and it takes a whole community to bring a community into harmony with truth, it's an awesomely powerful game to play, and it's a game you can play with yourself as you just observe your speech and start to catch the places where we've been taught to play the game of what's going on in my life is somebody else's fault. So that'll be one of the games you'll get to play when you come to Heartland.
Cool.
It is.
I'm looking forward to my time there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, any other thoughts or questions around the worksheet process?
No, I mean, certainly you're talking the other day about the red alligator. Certainly brought up a thing for me. It was realizing that the moment I put a label on somebody, that label tends to stick no matter what I think about them after that. That's what comes up for me. And so,
right.
For example, if even somebody that's in relationship with me, if I see that person as always, if I've labeled them one way, as you say, every time I think about them, that label still comes up for me. And
right.
So the real hard question is, how do you shift the label? How do you shift something like that where you've already labeled, where you've already judged somebody, so to speak?
Well, we have this tool called forgiveness.
Obviously.
And that's where the whole thing shifts, is when we take responsibility and we change our speech, our realities, and what's going on inside of me. And, of course, if I come from 1,000 generations of, let's say, prejudice in a certain arena, then all somebody has to do is show up that comes from that arena, whether it's skin color or, whatever it happens to be, ethnicity, whatever, then my mind will automatically, I can say to myself, well, I don't want to be prejudiced, but if in my generational database there's prejudice is going to come up. And when I apply the tool of forgiveness, I'll be able to see the root of that prejudice, remove it, and then I live in being with that person rather than out of the prejudices that I have.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah,
well, thank you, sir, for your call.
I really like your work and looking forward to sharing some time with you.
Awesome. We'll look forward to it too, Richard. Thanks for the call.
All right. Bye-bye.
Blessings. Bye-bye. Jeanie, any comments in the chat room? Any questions? We're getting into some pretty good stuff here.
No, there's no other questions, no hands up, and no comments in the chat room. You might want to remind your listeners that this is Memorial Day 4.
Yes, Memorial Day 4, and I want to go back to some more, talk a little bit more about speech and words and how powerful they are. But this is the 4th day of our memorializing Memorial Day, and on the holiday, so-called holiday, and I was talking to someone the other day. It's like, most people I know just go out and get, hamburgers and beer and get drunk. And that's their way of celebrating Memorial Day. It's like the whole idea has been, by many people, forgotten. And so what we want to do is memorialize Memorial Day on a daily basis and do that by honoring those who have either been forced to kill or be killed or injured in war, and the families who suffered from those results. And the way that we've decided to do that is to create an invitation on a daily basis for you and I to look at one thing that today we're willing to shift and change that would contribute to war. And what contributes to war? If you listen to the physicist who understood how this whole system worked, was a man named Yeshua, popularly known as Jesus, but he wasn't a theologian. He was a physicist. He was a geneticist. He knew psychology. He knew physiology in the most awesome way you can imagine. And what he said was, the power of life and death is in our words. And I'd offer that words based in hostility or fear are words that create our own personal death, because they are words that regulate our chemistry toward death, and they are words that promote war on the planet. Any words based in hostility or fear. So our invitation is to come out of those words and to start to use words that come from and represent and support an actual human life. And, of course, we have a whole store of words within us. In fact, they understood so well in the ancient Aramaic that they would say things like, your words come from the abundance of your heart. And that word heart in a modern updated language would be the unconscious. That we have this store of words, and the person who goes around in their cursing and their swearing and their rage and their cutting everybody else down and their criticism and their condemnation and their gossip and their slander does that because they don't have a consciousness of a human. They have a consciousness of what's gone on in their bloodline previously. Their store of words is based in that. And so forgiveness is the way that you get to the root of those words and remove them from your structure so that you start to move in a whole completely different direction. We just mentioned with Richard the idea of telling our story, and Terry Bowling, and I don't know if Terry happened to be there by chance with us, Jeanie? No. Well, Terry was on the other day, and what's that? Okay, well, let's hold a minute for the hand. So Terry was sharing with us that, and Terry's a fellow, and I'm not telling any tales out of school. He'd be happy to share this with you if he were here, and he's given me permission to share it. But Terry is someone who lived in a pretty rough world. As a kid, a lot of physical, emotional abuse, gone through things like drugs and alcohol, pretty rough, pretty heavy-duty life. And Terry shared with us last week, and he's been doing this work now for about 7 years. and extremely intensively for the last 3.5 years. And Terry shared with us that the other morning as he woke up, he was on a driving trip, and as he woke up in his focus, his story that he was telling himself from the minute of awakening was about his experience of the presence of love in his cellular structure that he achieved, and that's one of the goals that we offer is appropriate for this work, is to get to the point where your cellular structure is continuously plugged into your human life. So its power supply is love. We are not designed as human beings to be powered by words and thoughts and energies of hostility and fear. That's how we destroy and give up our human lives. And so Terry's been working, I've shared a couple of times, he started out, David from Heartland actually challenged Terry to start doing one worksheet a day for 10 days. And Terry took the challenge, did 10 days, and then did another 10 days. And then, I'm not sure exactly at what point, made the shift to taking on the challenge of doing 5 a day. And for over 3 years had done 5 worksheets a day. And about, it was back at the early days of the show, Terry called in and shared that, Michael, I'm getting such awesome results from the worksheet process that I'm upping my commitment to 10 worksheets a day. And so here's a guy who, if you looked at his life experience, has every right to be the most abusive, rageful, pained human in the world with the kinds of things that he went through as a kid. And I'll leave it to him if at some point he wants to get on the show and share it more specifically. And here he is. He's doing 10 worksheets a day, and after about 3.5 years of that, his wake-up time is the experience of the presence of love in his cellular structure and the delight of being plugged into that as his source. That's the human life, and that's what we're heading toward. And the other thing I want to say about words, and they're such a key, and the forgiveness process is how to get in touch with those unconscious words to be able to change them. That's what the worksheet is about, the worksheet we're talking about. And so I do a workshop called Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? And in that workshop, I offer a definition of a word as a tool of communication. And then ask people, is that a reasonable definition? Would everybody agree? And most people will go, yeah, that's a good definition. And so when words are being used, it's indicative of an interaction between two, right? There's a communication, so there are at least two involved. Most everybody will, yeah, that's true, okay. So then I ask the question, and I'll ask it of you now, if words are tools of communication indicative of an interaction between two, notice there are words running inside your head right now, and you're not communicating with anybody else. Who's in there with you? Who's telling you all the stories that you hear? Who's telling you what everything in your life means? And I'd offer who's advising you in that regard is your whole multi-generational database. You've got every thought, every feeling, every reality of every generation that's gone before you in your structure, and it's got a story. And its story probably isn't about human life. And we establish the definition of human life by simply holding a newborn child. It's all you have to do to know what human life is. And if your family story and if what you wake up with every morning is about a human life, is about the active presence of love and the awesome presence of love and the purity and the clarity and it's just so awesome, then great, you've got a genetic history that is fabulous and human. But if your story, and if your store of words, is based in loss and grief and pain and hatred and vengeance and hostility and fear, then you've got some work to do. Those are all the things that create suffering. And suffering is simply a warning signal that we're engaging in words in a creative process that we don't have any business engaging in. And so those who engage in words of hostility and fear are the creators of war. When we decide to give it up, we begin a change. We begin a shift. And we start to create a different dynamic on the planet. So those who have, in war, been forced to kill or been killed, maimed, suffered, and had family suffered as a result, we dedicate our work to you in honor of what you've given. And today, each one of us is going to pick somewhere that we're willing to do at least one small piece of work and let go to forgive. And if you want to access the forgiveness worksheet process, go to www.whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, download worksheets, first 2 links. We'll explain the whole process and give you the worksheet process. And Jeanie says we have a caller.
Yes. Hold on. And we've got area code 336. You're on the air. Who do we have?
Hi, this is Brad in Greensboro, North Carolina. And
hey, welcome, Brad.
Thank you. I'm really new to your work. I'm reading through the book, and I think I'm about a third of the way through, and I do have a little experience in doing some personal work. I've been in recovery, a 12-step recovery program for 5 years, and I've done some transformational work. And right now I'm in a process where I am writing down, like, every judgmental thought that comes in when I have a reaction with a client or with a friend, and I study A Course in Miracles as well. So I'm sort of inventorying all of this, and one of the barriers, and I have to say, like, what I'm committed to is to really create a line of demarcation for my life, to not operate inside the paradigms that have and in some ways still cause me a tremendous amount of suffering. And one of the barriers
can I ask you to hold your thought there?
Sure.
Can I ask you to hold your thought there for a second?
Yeah.
So one of the things that the non-being mind, the mind based in hostility or fear, will do is it will always find a way to slip in its perspective and keep us locked in that game. So when you're committed to not having this, your focus is this, guess what you create?
Gotcha.
This. So what would you want to be about creating as opposed to what, the non-being mind is real clear what it doesn't want to create, and it just keeps creating it by that clarity. So what would be the clarity? What would you want to be creating?
Totally, yeah. I'm creating being in the world a space of empowerment, freedom, and peace.
Awesome. You got my vote on that. I'll join you in that one. And notice what thinking about that did to your breath.
Yeah.
Did you catch that little gasp that when they're about halfway along?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the breath is such a key to how to shift the content of this mind. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the worksheet, and I'm looking at the long form, and what I notice is that I have a tendency when I begin looking at all these judgments that are seemingly outside, how I go into self-condemnation and then I shut down. I just don't want to go any further.
Once you catch yourself judging someone else, you stop and you turn it all into self-judgment.
Right.
Is that what I hear? So then what you just start doing is you start doing worksheets with yourself as the object of attention. In the early stages, one of the workshops we do is called The Circle of Life and How to Play It. And in that, what we point out is we've got the lower path, we've got 2 circles on the board when I'm doing this, the lower path behavior and the upper path behavior. And the lower path behavior is, this person is always focused on changing somebody else and doing it through hostility and fear. Yeah. The upper path alternative to that, to make a shift, is that I'm focused on changing myself through love and gentleness. However, if I've been focused on changing others through hostility and fear, the tendency will be, when I start to think about the upper path, is still to use the hostility and fear on myself, because that's what's the abundance of what's in my store. And so that would be another place that you do the reality management process. And that might be, with the depth of that kind of an issue, that might be one of the places where you'll do literally 77 times 70 worksheets to clear that one out, till you get to a point where your unconscious dynamic is that of spontaneously speaking of yourself in terms of love and creativity and gentleness. And when you make a mistake, go, oh, I made a mistake. Look who I am. I am love. I can change my mind. Rather than, oh, look at this awful thing I've done again, repeating the power person dynamic. So.
Okay. All right. That answers my question. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
and
so
thank you for this
with
work.
Yourself. Oh, you are most welcome. I'm delighted to be sharing it with you. And so worksheets with yourself at number 1A is the object of attention and, self-deprecation when I'm not perfect. And, probably you had a power person that when you weren't perfect was down and all over you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you'll, in order to change that pattern, those patterns, I don't know if you've been with us the last couple of weeks, we've been doing codependence work. If you haven't, you might want to go back to the first codependence archive, which was about 3 weeks ago, 3 and a little bit.
Okay.
And start listening from the beginning of that codependent stuff. And one of the things we point out is that when we become ultra-stressed, i.e. it would be a stress to be self-judgmental, look, here I am not being perfect, what we'll tend to do is go back and do what our power person did to us that we hated the most.
Man.
So when I hear you, when you shift into, stress of I made a mistake and then now I'm going to beat up on myself, then what I know is that you're copying the dynamic established by your power person, and that'll be the next level, the next piece of work. You're right on track.
All right, great. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, blessings. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Okay, Michael, we have a comment in the chat room that you might want to address.
Yes.
And we've heard a lot of this lately, so, it's a big thing going around right now is the Hawaiian mantra thing that I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and repeating that to yourself. And They said, and you can hug yourself while doing this. And it is awesome and it is powerful. However, do you want to address that it's a different kind of forgiveness than what we're talking about? And also it made me think of, we often tell people to not say I'm sorry, but to apologize.
Right.
So it's your words. So.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that in its Hawaiian origins, the translation, when you come out of the Hawaiian into our Western language, it turns into projection language. And so the perspective that I would take would be, because words govern how our minds show us reality, that, first of all, I never want to forgive anybody ever again for anything. Because what I've just done in my mind is reinforced, one, that they did something. So when I say I forgive you, obviously I forgive you for this. And by focusing on this, I tend to create a greater energy around this. Please, folks, please, stop forgiving people. Stop forgiving yourself. Never forgive anyone ever again for anything. If someone does something that's really bizarre and off the wall and you choose to pardon them, awesome. Pardon them. That's a nice thing to do. But pardoning somebody, letting them off the hook because you have something inside of you that's painful, is not forgiveness. It's pardoning. You've got it. Karl Marx says you want to destroy a culture, you change the meaning of its words. In Aramaic, forgiveness is a tool with which you go inside yourself and remove the pain, the turmoil, the trauma, the power person dynamics. Nothing to do with letting somebody else off the hook because they've triggered that dynamic in you. So if you choose to utilize that formula, I would suggest be accurate. I pardon you for what I perceive that you've done. Then the next step would be I go inside myself and forgive the pain, the turmoil, and the reality that you even did it to me. And so I apply forgiveness to what's going on inside of me to change that. If you hold a newborn child, you'll come to the experience of what love is. And love is a state of being. It is not a verb. It's not something that we do. Those who think that love is something you do end up looking for love in all the wrong places, as that song title came about years ago. We look for love in all the wrong places when we're ripped off for the accurate definition of the word love. Love is what you are. It is not what you do. So you can't are somebody. You can't love anybody. You can be love in their presence. So to me, the next step in that would be, and I choose to be love in your presence, as opposed to I love you, because love is a state of being. It's what we are. The world has ripped us off for the definition of love. It's changed the world, or pardon me, changed the word, which has changed the world, into something that it's not. You can't love another. You can be love in their presence. You can live out of your human life in their presence, and you give yourself and them an awesome gift. When you rip somebody else off for the presence of your love, the one who loses the experience of love is you. So my offering would be, the next step is that I choose to be love in your presence. And if something less than that comes up, then I'll forgive whatever that less than is. I'll remove that from my experience. So instead of I'm sorry and reinforcing, when you think about creation, you get two creative minds together and you get them focused on something, you've got creation. Let thine eye be single, thy body will be filled with light. So if I say to you, I'm sorry, obviously it's for this. Now I've got your mind and my mind focused on this. How soon do you suppose I'll be creating this again when I get everybody to focus on what it is that I don't want to be doing again? So what we suggest in this work is that rather than ever again saying the words you're sorry, that if you're off base and you recognize it and you choose to own it, that you communicate your apology. Gee, I goofed. I really made a mistake there, and I apologize. And then fill the space with what you want to create. So instead of, gee, I'm sorry that I bumped into you at the grocery store and stepped on your toe, it would be, excuse me, I apologize. That was really a mistake that I made in doing that. And in the future, I'm going to keep my eyes open and watch more clearly where I'm going and keep your toes safe. So you now have this other person's mind and your mind focused on what you're going to create. Which way do you suppose you'd have the highest percentage of possibility of creating the result that you want? When you talk about your sorry and what you did, or when you talk about your apology and what you're committed to doing to replace that behavior? I'd offer creation says, if you apologize and commit to doing something different, you're going to have a lot better chance of doing it. So that would be my take on the language that's become. And my understanding is that in the original Hawaiian, it comes out much closer to that. I believe that the Hawaiians, from some time we spent in Hawaii and some Hawaiian folks that we know, I believe that the Hawaiians are probably one of the lost tribes of Israel. And the root of their language, I suspect, is Aramaic. Why? Because, for one thing, the whole aloha thing is actually identical to the word rakma in Aramaic. And, excuse me, in the Aramaic language, when they spoke about what the first law was and we're told it was love, and it names three objects of attention, the creator, neighbor, and self. But in Aramaic, it doesn't say anything about loving the creator, loving your neighbor, or loving yourself. The word there is rakma. And rakma is a condition in the frontal lobes of the brain that allows your brain to only use data. This is not theology. This is the most brilliant psychology and the most brilliant way to maintain a human life that I've ever seen. That if you keep rakma active in your mind, what happens is the whole database that your mind can use for guiding your behavior is going to be based in love. It's going to be based in your human life. And this is a gateway for human life to enter what we call a human form. And so in the Hawaiian language, aloha is identical word to Rakma. And if you've ever watched the native Hawaiians when they greet, what they do is they connect forehead to forehead. They don't stick their hand out in somebody's face. They connect forehead to forehead, and they breathe each other's nasal air. My understanding is in the Hawaiian tradition, to breathe the air that comes from the mouth is kind of I guess you might call it even almost a sacrilege. You don't do that because the mouth can say so many vile things. You don't do that. But the nasal air is pure. And so the Hawaiians, when they greeted, joined foreheads, aloha to aloha, rakma to rakma, the reinforcing of the energetics of love in each mind. And then they exchanged nasal air, the pureness of being. And they called, we Westerners who stick our hand in people's faces when we greet them, they called us howlies. And it's kind of been turned into a derogatory term, but what it really means is greets without breath. That instead of connecting love filter to love filter, connecting in the energetics of human beingness, and my understanding is that until some of the other Southern Pacific Islanders that were violent and warlike came to Hawaii, there was virtually no war. The people lived in a true, peaceful, awesome culture, and the whole viciousness of war was introduced by some of the other Southern Pacific Islanders. And the Hawaiians in purity came forward and lived in a community of love. And if you go to the Aramaic language where they talk about the kingdom of God in Aramaic, what that translates is the community of love, a human community. And so that's where we want to go, to that human community. That's what we're about creating here with MindShifters Radio. That's what we're about creating in our travel workshops as we travel around the globe. And by the way, if you happen to be up in the Medford, Oregon or Ashland, Oregon area, starting on the 12th of June, we'll be at Unity in Medford. Actually, for 10 days, we're going to do a full series of free workshops. We'll be doing one paid workshop on the Saturday after the 12th. We'll be doing Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing, but otherwise, we've got a full series. I think there are a total of 10 workshops we'll be doing, starting out with Why Is This Happening to Me Again, Empowered to Heal, on creating consciously. We're going to do a lesson from the Course in Miracles. We're going to do healing through relationships. So, jump on the website, www.whyagain.com, and check out our schedule. If you know anybody in the Medford, Ashland area, if you're not there yourself, jump on our website, grab a PDF of the flyer, send it to them. Invite them to come and join us, or invite them to come and tap into our radio show and hear a little bit about what we're about doing and what we're about supporting in the world. Jeanie, any comments, questions, thoughts? Reminders for me?
No, I think that's got it, and everybody's just sitting there listening.
Cool. Well, is Dr. Tim and David with us today?
They are, and they're both
cool.
on.
Well, we started right out there, gentlemen, and I didn't even get to greet you. So welcome to the show. Glad you're here, and so delighted that you're both here for support in what we're doing.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's been a very good show and lots of good information. I love some of the clarification on the worksheet process and the specificity versus the general, I want the world to do this or that. That was very helpful for me. And it's really good to hear that somebody else is tapping into the work, and it blends very well with the 12-step program. I have a number of people I work with that are integrating it seamlessly with the 12-step work. So it's a joy to be here.
Awesome, absolutely. And one of the games the non-being mind will play is it'll start a worksheet, and it really doesn't want to look at what's under the surface. That's why there's a dissociated mind. And so one of the tricks will be, and it happens so often, is they'll start out with one object of attention, Harry, Joe, Bill, whatever. And then in the middle, it'll switch worksheets. When it gets to the goal, let's say, here I'm doing a worksheet on the boss, and I don't have enough money, and I don't have abundance, and they'll get down to the goal, and instead of the goal for the boss to support them, they'll shift into a goal for a better life. Now, that would be a perfect goal if they were doing a worksheet on life. If life were the object of attention of the worksheet, but with it being the boss, the more specific that you are in identifying the goal for that object of attention, the more crisply you'll get in touch with that particular file in the dissociated mind and be able to clear it out. So it's a really, thanks for reinforcing that, because that's a really important point. And each worksheet, be specific with, what do I want exactly from this particular object of attention? And I will always have a better chance of achieving it if I'm clear with that. David, how do you be this morning, or afternoon it is there? It's still morning where we are in Las Vegas, Nevada.
I'm doing very well. A few challenges, just,
Are you on your speaker, David?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you take the speaker off, because we really can't hear you very well ever when you're on the speaker.
Okay. So, things are going well, and my input when I was listening with Richard, and my thoughts around it are always about, whenever I'm doing a worksheet, just as you were speaking a minute ago, by the time that I even get down to the fourth or the fifth step, my mind has already come up with all of the answers and all of the reasons, justifications, and it sort of gets confused at times. And what I recommend that people do is that they do worksheets with each other and or make commitments with each other in order to do that, because on our own, it's very challenging to overcome that dissociated mind, because it's been running the shows for so long. And to have people that will remind us of different language, that will remind us of the purpose and the intention with that. And that's a real challenge to ask for that support and or to give that support. And that's really what we, if you want to speed the process up, so to express, then it's better to, the more that you can be involved with someone in doing it on a daily basis is what's really helpful.
Definitely. I'm in absolute agreement with that one. It's I love that African proverb, which, of course, you've heard me use often, and that is, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It takes a whole community to bring us forward in this process of healing. And getting out, in the ancient Aramaic, they talked about this slippery creature that always had a trick to play. If you look at all the ancient cultures, they all had a trickster. The joker in the deck of cards, and the trickster that could always turn things around. And in Aramaic, the name of the trickster is Satan. And Satan is not a capital word in Aramaic. Satan is a lowercase word, and it means the deceiver, one who misleads, and one who resists truth. And so when you recognize that a part of your mind is going to do its best to deceive you at every turn, that's where having available the support in processing that trickster, because we all believe what our trickster believes. We've all bought into, they did it to me and it's all their fault, and my father was right, I'm this and I'm that, and my mother was right, I should do this and I should do that, and on it goes. And as you recognize that, the trickster needs to be turned back into a servant. It is not designed to resist truth. It is designed to serve you, this huge database of information that you have to call on. But if that servant runs your life, then you are the master, bound by the servants in your own temple, the temple being your own structure. And our goal with this work is to support everyone in moving past the trickster, in walking into an actual human life, and by doing so, creating the absolute best year yet of your eternal life. And that's what we're here to support you with. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.